picture this a snowy Pennsylvania morning.
Mm.
You know, the kind that just makes you want to stay bundled up inside.
Oh, yeah.
But a man heads out to his truck,
Okay.
ready for work, and finds a garbage can tucked under it. Annoying, right?
Yeah.
Tries to move it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's way too heavy.
Uh-huh.
Curiosity gets the better of him, and he opens it,
Oh.
only to find a body wrapped in Christmas lights.
Oh, my
It's a
God.
chilling discovery that
Wow.
launches a complex investigation
Yeah.
and reveals a story about vulnerability, trust betrayed, and the dark side of human nature.
That juxtaposition of holiday cheer and brutal violence is really jarring.
Yeah.
It sets the stage for a case that forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths
Right.
about human behavior and the vulnerability of those who rely on others for safety and care.
This is the story of Jennifer Dockerty, a 30-year-old woman with an intellectual disability who, despite facing challenges, was full of life and had a deep yearning for connection.
Okay.
She cherished her family, always waiting for them at the end of the driveway after work. And she found joy in simple things like taking walks with her new friend, Peggy Miller.
It's important to understand Jennifer's world. Imagine the world through her eyes.
Yeah.
A world that might seem a bit brighter, a
Mm.
bit more trusting, where making friends is an especially exciting adventure.
Right.
That perspective helps us grasp the depth of the betrayal she experienced.
They met at the West Place Clubhouse, a community center for people with disabilities. And Jennifer was thrilled about an upcoming sleepover at Peggy's apartment in Greensburg.
Okay.
She even left a sweet note for her parents, mentioning some medical appointments she had planned during the visit. It seemed like a perfectly ordinary, even exciting event for her.
That note, filled with innocent anticipation,
Yeah.
adds another layer of tragedy to this story.
Right.
Jennifer's family had no reason to suspect any danger,
No.
and she, in her trusting nature, likely had no idea what she was walking into.
What Jennifer didn't know was that Peggy wasn't living alone. She was staying with Angela Marinucci, who was in a relationship with Ricky Smyrns, a man with a disturbing past.
Uh-oh.
And to complicate matters further, Jennifer had developed a crush on Ricky.
That web of relationships with its inherent power imbalances and conflicting emotions
Yeah?
immediately raises red flags.
Yeah.
It's a situation ripe for manipulation and exploitation, especially when someone like Ricky Smyrns with a history of violence is involved.
Right. Ricky already had a criminal record that included theft and sexual assault.
Oh, wow.
And when you consider Jennifer's intellectual disability and her desire for acceptance, it paints a very concerning picture.
Yeah,
This was not a safe environment for her.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It highlights a critical point.
Okay.
Vulnerability can take many forms,
Mm-hmm.
and perpetrators often target individuals they perceive as easy to control or manipulate.
Right?
It underscores the need for vigilance, not just from family and caregivers, but from society as a whole.
Tragically, in Jennifer's case, those safeguards were absent. When her sister Joy didn't get their usual morning phone call, a sense of dread set in.
Oh, no.
Then she saw the news report about a body found in a garbage can, and a terrifying thought took hold.
That moment of realization for Joy must have been devastating, the initial worry escalating to the horrifying possibility that the victim could be her sister.
Right.
It's an emotional roller coaster that no one should have to endure.
And the police, initially struggling to identify the body due to the extent of the injuries,
Oh, gosh.
showed Joy a picture.
Okay.
The truth was undeniable and utterly horrifying. It was Jennifer.
It's hard to fathom the pain Jennifer's family must have felt at that moment.
Yeah.
To see someone they loved, someone who deserved kindness and protection, reduced to an unrecognizable victim of such brutality
Right.
is truly heartbreaking.
The investigation quickly led them to 428 North Pennsylvania Avenue, Ricky Smyrns' apartment.
Okay.
Remember that garbage can?
Yeah?
It was traced back to his place.
That discarded garbage can became a crucial piece of evidence, a tangible link to the crime scene and the individuals involved.
Right.
It also speaks to a chilling lack of remorse or even a basic attempt to conceal their actions.
Armed with a search warrant, the police uncovered a horrific scene.
Okay.
Bloodstains, weapons, and even Jennifer's belongings were found hidden in the attic,
Wow.
painting a picture of a chaotic and violent struggle.
Oh, my.
It was clear that something truly terrible had happened within those walls.
The state of the apartment raises a haunting question.
Yeah.
How could such brutality occur without anyone outside the group noticing or intervening?
Right.
Were there any missed warning signs, any cries for help that went unheard?
It's a chilling reminder that even in seemingly ordinary settings, darkness can lurk unseen.
Yeah.
And as the investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a disturbing truth.
Okay.
It wasn't just Ricky and Angela involved.
Yeah.
There were 4 others. Amber Meidinger, Melvin Knight, Robert Masters, and chillingly, Peggy herself,
Oh, wow.
the friend Jennifer had trusted so completely. These 6 individuals would become known as the Greensburg Six.
The involvement of multiple individuals introduces a new layer of complexity to this case.
Yeah.
It raises questions about group dynamics, peer pressure, and the potential for a shared delusion that can escalate violence to unthinkable levels.
Right.
How did a group of seemingly ordinary individuals descend into such depravity?
Their initial claims were that they just wanted to humiliate Jennifer,
Okay.
perhaps fueled by Angela's jealousy over Jennifer's crush on Rookie.
Uh-huh.
But what they called humiliation was actually torture,
Right.
a systematic campaign of abuse that escalated with each passing hour.
That attempt to downplay their actions as mere humiliation is deeply disturbing.
Yeah.
It reveals a complete lack of empathy and a deliberate attempt to minimize the severity of the suffering they inflicted upon Jennifer.
Right.
We need to call it what it was, torture, plain and simple.
They cut off her hair, beat her with crutches and soda bottles, forced her to consume horrific things like urine, feces, and bleach.
Oh my God.
Even tied her up with those Christmas lights.
It's hard to even imagine the terror and pain she must have endured.
It's awful.
The level of cruelty is simply staggering.
Yeah.
Each act of abuse compounded the trauma, stripping Jennifer of her dignity and pushing her further into a nightmare she couldn't escape.
Right.
It's a stark reminder of the vulnerability of individuals with disabilities and the urgent need for their protection.
But here's where it gets even more disturbing.
Okay.
While all this was happening, the police actually visited the apartment.
Wait, the police were at the apartment while Jennifer was being held captive?
Yes.
What a horrifying missed opportunity for intervention.
I know.
It's a stark reminder of how even with law enforcement nearby, evil can still lurk unseen.
Right.
And it raises questions about whether there were any miscues, any signs that could have alerted the officer to the horrors unfolding inside.
A former tenant needed to retrieve some belongings, and an officer accompanied them.
Okay.
But the Greensburg Six managed to hide Jennifer in the attic, threatening her into silence.
That detail is chilling. Jennifer was so close to being rescued, yet the fear instilled by her captors prevented her from seeking help.
Right.
It highlights the insidious nature of abuse, the manipulation and control exerted by perpetrators to silence their victims and maintain their power.
Tragically, she obeyed, and after the police left, the abuse continued escalating with each passing hour.
It's difficult to grasp the despair Jennifer must have felt in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
The flicker of hope extinguished, replaced by the grim reality of her situation and the knowledge that her tormentors had successfully evaded detection.
It's awful.
It's a heartbreaking reminder of how easily opportunities for intervention can be missed and the devastating consequences that can follow. It's a stark reminder that even a brief encounter with law enforcement doesn't guarantee safety.
No, it doesn't.
The perpetrator's ability to manipulate the situation and maintain control over Jennifer underscores the insidious nature of abuse and the challenges of intervention.
It's almost unimaginable to think that Jennifer was mere feet away from potential rescue,
Right.
yet remained trapped. It really highlights the power dynamics at play and how fear and coercion can silence victims.
Precisely. The Greensburg Six had created an environment where Jennifer felt completely isolated and powerless.
Wow.
Unable to trust even those in a position to help.
Right.
And as the hours turned into days, the situation only grew more dire.
It seems their cruelty knew no bounds. They even forced Jennifer to write a suicide note, a chilling attempt to cover up their horrific crime.
That act speaks volumes about their depravity. Not only did they subject her to physical and emotional torture, but they also sought to manipulate the narrative to paint a picture of despair and hopelessness that masked their own culpability.
It's a truly disturbing detail.
Yeah.
And then they held these so-called family meetings.
Okay.
3 of them to decide Jennifer's fate.
These family meetings offer a glimpse into a twisted group mentality.
Yeah.
What began as a desire to humiliate Jennifer morphed into something far more sinister.
Wow.
The violence escalated with each meeting culminating in a chilling decision.
They voted to kill her. Ricky and Melvin took Jennifer to the bathroom and stabbed her repeatedly until she died.
The cold-bloodedness of that act is simply incomprehensible.
I know.
To decide someone's life by a vote, then carry out such a brutal murder,
Right.
demonstrates a complete disregard for human life. It's a chilling reminder that evil can manifest in the most unexpected places.
And then, as if the murder itself wasn't horrific enough, They put her body in that garbage can wrapped in the Christmas lights and garland and dumped it near the middle school.
The disposal of Jennifer's body mirrors the utter lack of humanity. They treated her like trash, discarding her in a manner that reflects the callous indifference they had shown throughout her captivity.
It's a truly heartbreaking end to a young woman's life that should have been filled with so much more.
Right.
And as the investigation unfolded, the Greensburg Six were quickly arrested.
Okay.
But instead of showing remorse, they turned on each other, throwing out accusations and trying to minimize their own roles in the crime.
That's a common reaction in cases like this. A desperate attempt to shift blame and distance oneself from the horror.
Right.
It's as if they were trying to convince themselves and the world that they weren't truly responsible for the atrocities they committed.
Amber Meidinger, who was pregnant at the time,
Okay.
made a decision that would change the course of the case.
Mm-hmm.
She took a plea deal and agreed to testify against the others, revealing horrific details about the torture and those chilling family meetings.
Amber's testimony proved to be a turning point in the investigation.
Yeah.
It provided an inside look into the group's dynamics and the escalating violence that ultimately led to Jennifer's death.
Right.
Her decision to cooperate, despite facing her own charges,
Yeah.
suggests a glimmer of remorse and a desire to expose the truth, however difficult it might have been.
She shared Jennifer's desperate pleas for mercy, how she kept asking why they were doing this to her.
Oh, gosh.
A detail that just breaks your heart.
That detail, amidst the brutality, humanizes Jennifer in a way that is both profound and heartbreaking. It reminds us that she was not just a victim, but a person with thoughts, feelings, and a deep desire to understand why those she considered friends were inflicting such pain upon her.
It's a reminder of the terror and confusion Jennifer must have felt trapped in a nightmare with no escape.
Right.
And despite the overwhelming evidence, some members of the Greensburg Six continued to deny their full responsibility. Ricky Smyrns, for example, claimed he only cut Jennifer's wrists and tried to blame Melvin Knight for the fatal stab wounds.
That's a common tactic among perpetrators to minimize their involvement, to create a narrative where they weren't the ones who delivered the final fatal blow.
Right.
But in a case like this, where the abuse was so systematic and prolonged, such attempts to deflect blame ring hollow.
His defense team even brought in a psychologist who testified about Ricky's low IQ traumatic childhood and multiple personalities, attempting to paint a picture of a man who wasn't fully in control of his actions.
This is where the case enters a complex and ethically challenging territory. While Ricky's background might offer some context for his behavior, it doesn't excuse the brutality of his actions. The question becomes, at what point does personal history cease to mitigate culpability for such horrific crimes?
It's a question that juries grapple with all the time, weighing the factors that contribute to criminal behavior. And in Ricky's case, despite the arguments presented by his defense team, the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced him to death.
That verdict reflects the severity of the crime and the jury's belief that Ricky Smyrns, despite any mitigating factors, deserved the ultimate punishment for his role in Jennifer's death.
Wow.
It also sends a message that society will not tolerate such callous disregard for human life, regardless of the perpetrator's background.
He appealed, of course, but the sentence was upheld in 2017. Meanwhile, Melvin Knight also tried to claim he acted out of fear for his pregnant girlfriend, Amber.
Okay.
But her testimony painted a very different picture.
Yes, Amber's testimony directly contradicted Melvin's claims. She stated that he had raped Jennifer and willingly participated in the torture.
Oh, wow.
Refuting the notion that he was merely a reluctant follower acting out of fear.
And to further solidify his culpability, Melvin's own confession tapes were played in court, where he admitted to torturing and killing Jennifer. He, too, was found guilty and sentenced to death.
The presentation of those confession tapes must have had a profound impact on the jury.
I imagine.
Hearing Melvin's own words describing his actions devoid of any remorse or attempt to justify his behavior likely left no doubt in their minds about his guilt and the premeditation involved.
So we see two of the main perpetrators receiving the most severe punishment for their crimes.
Right.
But what about the others? Angela Marinucci, who was only 17 at the time, presented a different kind of legal challenge.
Okay.
She claimed she was a friend to Jennifer and tried to stop the abuse.
Angela's case raises complex questions about the role of youth in criminal behavior and the potential for rehabilitation. While her age at the time of the crime is certainly a factor to consider, the prosecution presented a very different picture of her involvement.
Yes. Other inmates testified that Angela actually bragged about the murder and enjoyed the media attention. It seemed to contradict her claims of remorse and painted her as a willing participant rather than a victim of circumstance.
Those testimonies from fellow inmates challenged the narrative presented by Angela's defense team.
Yeah.
They suggested a disturbing lack of remorse and a potential for future violence, raising concerns about her suitability for leniency.
Her lawyers, of course, argued that she was heavily influenced by the older members of the group, particularly Ricky Smyrns, and that she suffered from depression and possible substance abuse issues.
Those arguments highlight the complexities of culpability, especially when dealing with a minor involved in such a horrific crime.
Right.
Determining the extent to which she was a willing participant versus a victim of manipulation within the group dynamic becomes a crucial factor in assessing her sentence.
It's a delicate balance, acknowledging the potential for influence and rehabilitation, while still holding individuals accountable for their actions. And in Angela's case, the court ultimately determined that while she couldn't receive the death penalty due to her age at the time of the crime, a life sentence was warranted.
That sentence reflects the legal system's recognition of the unique circumstances of juvenile offenders,
Okay.
while holding her accountable for her role in Jennifer's death. It also leaves open the possibility for rehabilitation and a life beyond the horrific events of her past.
It's a sentence that, while perhaps less severe than those given to Ricky and Melvin, still carries significant weight. And then we have Peggy Miller and Robert Masters, both of whom took a different legal path, pleading guilty to third-degree murder.
Their guilty pleas acknowledge their role in the crime, even if they claim they didn't directly participate in the physical abuse inflicted upon Jennifer.
Right.
It raises questions about the nature of complicity. To what extent are individuals responsible for a crime they witnessed but didn't actively participate in?
That's a question that often arises in cases involving multiple perpetrators.
Yeah.
Where do we draw the line between passive observation and active participation?
Right.
And in this case, Jennifer's family expressed anger over what they perceived as lenient sentences, for Peggy and Robert feeling that they weren't truly sorry for what happened.
That anger is understandable. For Jennifer's family, no punishment could truly equate to the loss they suffered.
Right.
The perceived leniency of those sentences likely added to their pain and sense of injustice.
Peggy received a sentence of 35 to 74 years,
Okay.
while Robert received 30 to 70 years.
Oh.
Their lawyers argued that they were afraid of the others, particularly Ricky Smyrns, and feared for their own lives if they intervened or spoke out.
That defense speaks to the power dynamics within the group and the climate of fear that permeated their interactions.
Yeah.
It suggests an environment of coercion and intimidation where speaking out or defying the group's leader could have had dire consequences. However, it also raises the question, does fear truly absolve them of responsibility for their inaction?
It's a complex question, one that likely weighed heavily on the judge's mind during sentencing. And adding another layer of complexity, Peggy and Robert claimed they had alerted the other four when Jennifer begged them to let her go or call the police.
That's a chilling detail. Instead of offering help,
Wow.
they actively participated in her captivity,
Right.
further solidifying the group's control over Jennifer and perpetuating the cycle of abuse.
Yeah.
Their claims raise serious doubts about their sincerity and whether they genuinely intended to help her.
It seems that even within this group of perpetrators, there were varying degrees of culpability and differing motivations. But ultimately, their actions collectively resulted in Jennifer's tragic death. And this case, with all its complexities and disturbing details, had a lasting impact on Pennsylvania law.
Absolutely. The horrific circumstances surrounding Jennifer's death led to the passage of Jennifer's Law, a law specifically designed to address the issue of bystander intervention in cases of violent crime.
Wow.
It's a testament to her legacy, ensuring that her tragic death served as a catalyst for meaningful change.
Can you elaborate on how Jennifer's Law specifically works to prevent similar tragedies from happening?
Certainly, prior to Jennifer's Law, Pennsylvania law did not explicitly require witnesses to report violent crimes.
Right.
This meant that individuals who witnessed abuse or knew of its occurrence could remain silent without facing legal consequences. Jennifer's Law changed that.
So it essentially made it mandatory for people to report if they witnessed a violent crime taking place.
Yes, exactly. The law now requires individuals who witness a violent crime in progress
Okay.
or have knowledge that such a crime is being committed to contact law enforcement.
Okay.
Failure to do so can result in criminal charges. It's a powerful tool designed to encourage bystander intervention and hold individuals accountable for their inaction.
It's a significant shift in legal responsibility. And I imagine that having a law like this in place could potentially deter perpetrators as well, knowing that there's a greater likelihood of witnesses coming forward.
Absolutely. Jennifer's law serves a dual purpose.
Okay.
It not only encourages bystanders to intervene and report crimes, but it also creates a climate where perpetrators are less likely to believe they can act with impunity.
Yeah.
The knowledge that someone might be watching, someone might be compelled to report, can act as a deterrent to violence.
It's a powerful reminder that we all have a role to play in preventing violence and protecting vulnerable individuals. Jennifer's Law is a legacy that will hopefully prevent other families from enduring a similar tragedy.
Indeed. It's a testament to the enduring impact of Jennifer's story and a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable loss, we can find hope in our collective efforts to create a safer and more just society.
It makes you wonder, could Jennifer's death have been prevented? Like, what signs might someone have noticed that could have alerted them to the danger?
That's a question that haunts many cases like this.
Yeah.
It's natural to look back and search for those missed opportunities, those red flags that might have made a difference. And while we can't change the past, we can learn from it and become more vigilant in the present.
So what are some of the warning signs that someone might be a victim of abuse, especially someone with an intellectual disability who might be more trusting or less able to advocate for themselves?
That's a crucial point. Vulnerable individuals often face unique challenges when it comes to recognizing and reporting abuse.
Right?
They might not fully understand what's happening to them, or they might be afraid to speak out for fear of retaliation.
So we need to be their advocates, their
Yeah.
protectors.
Yes.
But how can we do that effectively? What should we be looking for?
There are several key indicators that might signal abuse.
Okay.
One of the most obvious is physical injury.
Right.
Unexplained bruises, cuts, burns, or broken bones should always raise concerns. Changes in behavior can also be a red flag.
Okay.
Is the person suddenly withdrawn, anxious, or fearful? Are they avoiding certain people or places?
Those are things that anyone, even those without close contact with the individual, might notice.
Exactly.
Like a teacher, a neighbor, a family friend.
We all have a responsibility to be observant and pay attention to those subtle shifts in behavior that might indicate something is wrong. And of course, if someone directly discloses abuse, it's crucial to take them seriously and report it to the appropriate authorities.
It's about creating a culture of awareness where we're all attuned to the signs of abuse and empowered to take action.
Yeah.
And I know that Jennifer's family, in the wake of this tragedy, has spoken out about the importance of vigilance and compassion. They've shared their story in the hope that others can learn from their pain.
Their willingness to speak out despite the immense grief they've endured is incredibly courageous.
It really is.
They've channeled their pain into a powerful message of awareness and advocacy. They've urged others to be more observant, more compassionate, more willing to speak up when something doesn't seem right.
And they've also spoken about the guilt they feel, wondering if they could have done something differently to protect Jennifer.
It's natural for families to grapple with those feelings of guilt and regret after a tragedy. They might replay events in their minds, searching for those missed opportunities or signs they should have recognized.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that ultimately the responsibility for this horrific crime lies with the perpetrators, not with Jennifer's family.
Yes. The blame should be placed squarely where it belongs on those who committed these acts of violence.
Right.
But Jennifer's family's message is still a vital one. It's a call to action for all of us to be more aware, more vigilant, more willing to step up and protect those who might be vulnerable.
Absolutely. We can honor Jennifer's memory by taking their message to heart, by promoting awareness, supporting organizations that assist individuals with disabilities, and advocating for stronger protections for vulnerable populations. We can work together to prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future.
It's a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable darkness, we can find hope in our collective efforts to create a safer and more compassionate world. And it's a legacy that, thanks to Jennifer's Law and the tireless advocacy of her family, will hopefully continue to save lives and prevent future tragedies.
Indeed, Jennifer's story, while filled with pain and loss, ultimately serves as a catalyst for change.
Yes.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in protecting the vulnerable and creating a society where everyone feels safe and valued.
And that's a message worth sharing, a message that we hope resonates with all of our listeners today. If you found this deep dive into the Jennifer Dockerty case thought-provoking, we encourage you to share it with others and continue the conversation about vulnerability abuse and the importance of bystander intervention. And if you want to explore more stories that uncover hidden truths and challenge us to think critically about the world around us, be sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.